I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, the signs were everywhere. I was standing at my cousin's wedding, surrounded by family, friends, and strangers, and there was this unease in the air I couldn't quite shake. It wasn't anything obvious, just a small shift in the atmosphere, a strange tension that felt like an undercurrent to the whole event. Everyone was laughing, drinking, and enjoying the night, but I could feel the discomfort. At the time, I just brushed it off, thinking it was the usual wedding stress, the nerves. But something told me this was different. It wasn't until much later that I realized how much had been building up beneath the surface. It all started with a simple conversation, a comment that, in hindsight, should have raised alarms. But I didn't see it. Not yet. That night, I stood by the bar, trying to enjoy the music, when my sister, Rachel, walked up to me. She gave me this strange look, something between pity and frustration, before saying, "You know, Mom's been talking about you behind your back again." I laughed it off. "What else is new?" I said. But Rachel didn't laugh. She just stared at me, as if she were waiting for something, waiting for me to catch on. I felt a knot in my stomach. "You should really talk to her," she added, her voice low. I nodded, but something in the way she said it didn't sit right with me. My mom and I had never seen eye to eye, but this felt different. The way Rachel said it, there was this undertone, like she was worried. I tried to shake it off. It was a wedding after all, and I didn't want to let anything spoil the mood. But that conversation stayed with me. I couldn't quite shake the feeling that there was more going on than I knew. The next few days, I noticed it more and more, those subtle comments from family members, the looks, the things left unsaid. It was like I was suddenly under a microscope, and everyone had an opinion about my life. My mom, especially, seemed to be watching me more closely than ever. It wasn't until a few weeks later that I realized just how bad it had gotten. I was at a family dinner, sitting at the table with my parents, Rachel, and a few distant relatives. The usual chatter was going on around me, but I couldn't ignore the uncomfortable silence that settled when I spoke. I noticed the way my mom looked at me, almost as if she was waiting for me to say something wrong. The weight of her gaze was suffocating. I tried to joke about something, but the conversation quickly shifted, and I could feel my words being dismissed. It was like I didn't belong there, like I wasn't even part of the family anymore. Then came the moment that tipped everything over the edge. My mom casually mentioned something about my career, or rather, she implied I wasn't doing enough. "You know," she said, her voice cutting through the conversation, "I always thought you'd be further along by now. It's hard to respect someone who doesn't make progress." I froze. My dad looked up from his plate, but I could tell he wasn't going to intervene. It wasn't the first time my mom had said something like this, but it was the first time I really felt the sting of it. Everyone else at the table went silent, waiting for my reaction. I didn't say anything at first. What could I say? I just sat there, the weight of her words pressing on my chest. My face probably flushed, but I didn't let it show. I was too used to this kind of treatment. I'd heard it all before. But this time, there was something different about it. The way she looked at me, like I was a disappointment, a failure, it cut deeper than I was willing to admit. I could feel the eyes of the family on me, their expectations heavy in the air. I could feel my brother, Mark, watching me from across the table, but he said nothing. The silence stretched on, suffocating the room. Finally, I forced myself to speak. "I'm doing fine, Mom. I'm not on your timeline, but I'm doing fine," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. But she didn't respond to that. Instead, she just gave me a long look, one of those looks that said more than words ever could. It wasn't until later, when I was alone in my car, that I realized how much it had hurt. How much I'd let it hurt. I thought I was used to her criticism, but this time, it hit differently. There was something in her eyes, a judgment, a finality, that made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. Why was it that every time I tried to make a decision for myself, they all seemed to have an opinion? Why did it feel like my life was constantly being measured by someone else's standards? And what was it that my mom was really trying to say? It wasn't just the words, it was the weight behind them, the way she made me feel like I wasn't enough. I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something was off. The tension had been building for months, and I was just starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, I had been too blind to see it. What was really going on here? What was everyone hiding? I thought about it for days after that dinner. It didn't make sense. Why had my mom's words struck me so hard? She'd said similar things before, but this time, it felt different. And it wasn't just her. It was everyone. I felt like I was being watched, measured, and judged by a family that should have had my back, but instead, it felt like they were waiting for me to fail. I couldn't get the image of their faces out of my mind, the way they'd all looked at me, silently judging. I hated the feeling. But there was no escaping it. I kept playing it over in my head, trying to make sense of it all. It wasn't until I ran into Rachel a few days later that I started to understand just how deep this really went. She showed up at my apartment unexpectedly, looking unusually serious. "We need to talk," she said, not even bothering with the usual small talk. I knew something was wrong. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to act casual, but the knot in my stomach was already tightening. She looked at me for a moment, as if she was weighing whether or not to speak. I could tell she was holding something back. Then she sighed, sitting down next to me. "You really don't see it, do you?" she asked, her voice almost apologetic. "See what?" I replied, a bit defensively. "Mom and Mark have been talking about you. They've been worried about you," she said, her words heavy with meaning. I could feel my heart sink. "What are you talking about? Why? Would they be worried about me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel shook her head. "It's not that simple. They think you've been making some questionable decisions lately," she said, choosing her words carefully. The way she said it made me feel like I'd done something wrong, like I was being scrutinized for things I hadn't even realized. "Questionable decisions?" I repeated, incredulously. "Like what? My job? My life?" Rachel looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know. But they think you're stuck. Like you're not moving forward." Her words stung, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. It was like someone had just pointed out everything I feared but never said out loud. "Stuck." I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel nodded. "They're worried, Mike. They want you to figure things out, and they don't think you are. And it's been putting a strain on all of us. Especially with Dad's health. You're not doing enough to help. They feel like you've been distant." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. The reality of what she was saying settled in. It wasn't just my mom, it was Mark too. It was everyone, all at once, looking at me like I was the problem. I felt like I was suffocating. "I've been doing my best," I said, the frustration starting to creep into my voice. "But no one sees that, do they?" Rachel sighed, her expression softening. "I know you're trying, but they don't see it that way. And it's causing more tension than you realize." Her words lingered in the air, like an accusation I couldn't shake. For the first time, I felt truly alone in my own family. I had no idea how deep the divide had become, how disconnected we'd all become from each other. Everything I thought I knew about my family was suddenly called into question. And as I sat there, listening to Rachel, I realized I hadn't been the only one hurting. They'd been hurting too, but they hadn't said anything, at least not to me. I tried to push the thoughts aside, but they lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Rachel's words over and over, unable to shake the weight of them. I thought about everything that had happened in the past year, the distance, the Tension, the constant feeling of being judged. And now, it all made sense. It wasn't just a feeling. It was real. My family didn't think I was enough. They thought I was stuck, not moving forward. And that feeling, that crushing sense of failure, started to eat away at me. The next day, I decided I needed to confront it. I had to know what they really thought. So, I went over to my parents' house. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I knocked on the door, and when my mom opened it, I could tell she was surprised to see me. "Mike, what's going on?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside. She didn't argue. I could see the tension in her eyes, but she didn't stop me. We sat down in the living room, and for the first time in a long time, I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the worry etched into her face. "Mom," I began, trying to steady my voice, "Rachel told me what you and Mark have been saying." She didn't flinch. She just sat there, waiting for me to continue. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Why is it that you guys think I'm not doing enough? Why do you think I'm stuck?" For a long moment, there was silence. I could see my mom struggling with the words, trying to find a way to explain. Finally, she spoke. "Mike," she said, her voice gentle, "it's not that you're not trying. It's just, you haven't found your way yet. You're not where you should be." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. She was right. I wasn't where I should be. I hadn't achieved what they expected of me, what they'd always expected. And the worst part? I didn't know how to change that. It was like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I didn't know how to take the next step. I tried to explain, but my words felt hollow, like they didn't matter. I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. "I'm doing my best," I said, but it felt like an excuse. My mom just nodded, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. "I know you are, Mike," she said softly. "But sometimes, it feels like you're not even trying to move forward." The air between us was thick with unspoken words. I felt trapped in this cycle, this expectation that I couldn't seem to escape. And worse, I felt like I was losing my family because of it. My mom's words echoed in my head as I left her house that day. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed somehow, that no matter how hard I tried, it wasn't enough. And the worst part? I didn't even know how to fix it. I spent the next few days trying to make sense of everything that had happened. My mom's words still echoed in my head. "You're not where you should be." She was right. I had spent so many years thinking I was doing okay, that I was just taking my time, but now I realized that wasn't enough. There were too many things I hadn't done, too many things I should have done by now. The feeling of falling short hung over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't escape it. The pressure was starting to build, and I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I couldn't stop thinking about my family, my mom, my brother Mark, even Rachel, how they all seemed to have it together, while I was left struggling to catch up. Every time I saw them, I could feel their expectations weighing on me. I tried to tell myself I was okay, that I was just figuring things out at my own pace. But deep down, I knew they were right. I wasn't moving forward. And that realization hurt more than anything. I knew it was time to face the truth. The only problem was, I didn't know how to do it. I couldn't change everything overnight, but I had to start somewhere. I had to prove to myself, and to them, that I wasn't stuck. It wasn't long before the next family gathering came around. It was just a small get-together, nothing fancy. I had promised myself that I would handle it differently this time, that I wouldn't let the weight of their judgment get to me. I wanted to show them that I was moving forward, that I was capable. But as soon as I walked into the house, I felt the familiar tension. My mom was in the kitchen, chatting with some of the relatives, and Mark was sitting at the dining table, flipping through his phone. Rachel was there too, but she was talking to my aunt in the living room. As I stood there, I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, as if they were all waiting for something, waiting to see if I would mess up again. I took a deep breath and walked into the kitchen, trying to shake off the unease. My mom smiled when she saw me. "Hi, Mike. How are you?" she asked, her voice pleasant, but there was something in her tone that felt distant. "I'm good, Mom," I replied, trying to sound confident. "Just busy, you know." She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. "Well, it's nice to have you here," she said, turning back to the stove. "Everyone's been asking about you." I didn't know if that was a good thing or not. "How's work going?" she asked, the question sounding casual, but I knew she was fishing for something. I hesitated for a moment. "It's going well," I said, keeping my answer vague. I didn't want to get into it, especially with her. The conversation drifted off, and I could feel the familiar tension building. It was like no matter what I said, it wasn't going to be enough. I wasn't enough. I glanced over at Mark, who was still absorbed in his phone, and I could feel the resentment building up inside me. It wasn't just the pressure from Mom, it was from everyone. I felt like I was constantly under a microscope, like they were waiting for me to fail. And the worst part was that I was letting it happen. I didn't want to be this person, the one who couldn't meet their expectations. I didn't want to be the disappointment. But here I was, stuck in this cycle, and I didn't know how to break free. I grabbed a drink from the counter and turned toward the dining room, trying to avoid the growing knot in my stomach. As I walked past Mark, he looked up from his phone and gave me a quick nod. He didn't say anything, but there was a look in his eyes, one that made me feel like I wasn't part of the family anymore. It was a look that said, "You're not living up to the standards." And it hurt. I sat down at the table, my back stiff. I could feel the tension rising in the room, and I knew it wasn't just me. It was everyone. We were all playing this game, pretending like everything was fine when it was anything but. It wasn't long before the conversation turned to the usual topics: work, relationships, life, but I could feel my mom's eyes on me. She was waiting for something, some sign that I was finally getting it together. But the more I tried to fake it, the more I realized I was only digging myself deeper into this hole. The pressure was suffocating. As the evening went on, I tried to act like everything was fine, but I could feel the cracks starting to show. I wasn't fooling anyone, least of all myself. And then, during dinner, the conversation took a turn. My mom, as casually as ever, brought up something that made my blood run cold. "Mike," she said, her voice sweet but with an edge, "I've been thinking about what you said the other day. About being stuck. Maybe you need a change of pace, a new direction." I froze. I didn't expect her to bring it up like this. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice tense. She looked at me with that same calculating gaze. "Maybe it's time to stop making excuses and actually do something about it," she said, her words laced with judgment. I could feel the weight of her gaze on me, like she was waiting for me to crumble. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone had stopped talking, all eyes on me. It felt like I was back in high school, being called out in front of everyone. And for a moment, I thought I might snap. The pressure was too much. But instead of saying something I would regret, I just sat there, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to lash out, to tell her how suffocating this was, how much I hated this feeling of never being enough. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching everyone waiting for me to react. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my brother Mark spoke up. "Mom's right, Mike," he said, his voice colder than I expected. "Maybe it's time you took responsibility and grew up." His words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to scream, to tell him how much his judgment hurt, but I couldn't. I just sat there, silent. The tension in the room was unbearable, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. And the weight of it all was starting to crush me. I didn't know how much longer I could sit there. The words my brother, Mark, had just said hit harder than anything I had expected. Maybe it's time you took responsibility and grew up. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a statement, a final verdict in his eyes. The air in the room felt heavy, suffocating. I could feel all eyes on me, waiting for me to react. But instead, I sat there frozen, unable to respond. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. My chest felt tight, and my hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard I thought I might break the wood. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them that I wasn't the problem, that they didn't understand what I was going through. But no words came. I could feel the heat of their judgment, the weight of their expectations, and the growing sense of isolation that was starting to consume me. I had always been the one who kept quiet in situations like this, the one who observed everything, waiting for the right moment to speak. But today, the silence felt different. It wasn't just me trying to avoid conflict, it was me avoiding the truth that had been staring me in the face for so long. I had been so caught up in my own frustration, my own fears of failure, that I couldn't see the bigger picture. And now, sitting at that table, surrounded by people who I thought understood me, I realized I had been running away from it all. Mark's words echoed in my mind. Grow up. It felt like a punch to the gut. What did he mean by that? Was I really still stuck in the past, unable to move forward? Was I that much of a disappointment to everyone around me? I couldn't help but feel the weight of all those years I had spent feeling like I was never enough. I had spent so much time trying to prove myself to my family, to show them that I was capable, but it never seemed to be enough. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how many hours I put into my job or how much I tried to fix the messes in my life. Nothing ever seemed to satisfy them. And the worst part was, I didn't even know what they really wanted from me. I thought I was doing everything right, but now, sitting in that room, I realized I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I felt like a failure, like I had been fooling myself for all these years. And just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my mom spoke. Mike, we're not saying you're a failure, she said, her voice softer now, but still tinged with the same disappointment. But you can't keep running from your responsibilities. I looked up at her, finally meeting her gaze. Responsibilities? I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. What responsibilities? What do you want from me? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at me, like she was trying to find the right words. We want you to take control of your life, she said, her voice breaking slightly. You've been living in this bubble, avoiding the things that matter. And we just want to see you step up, Mike. Her words cut deeper than anything Mark had said. I had always known that my mom had high expectations, but hearing it like this, so raw, so honest, was harder to bear than I had ever imagined. I had been so focused on what I thought was right, what I thought was the right way to live my life, that I had completely missed the point. It wasn't about success or failure, it was about responsibility. And the truth was, I had been avoiding it for so long. I had been trying to escape the pressure, the expectations, the fear of not measuring up. But now, I realized that I couldn't run from it anymore. I had to face it. And that terrified me. The conversation dragged on, but I barely heard the words anymore. It was like the world had gone quiet, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart in my chest. I was trapped in this cycle of doubt and insecurity, and no matter how hard I tried to break free, I couldn't. The more they spoke, the more I realized how much I had been ignoring. I wasn't just stuck in my job or my life, I was stuck in this mindset, this belief that I wasn't enough. That I couldn't be enough. I couldn't keep going on like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. My family, despite their flaws and their judgment, just wanted me to be better. And I wasn't. I was hiding behind excuses, behind the idea that I was too busy, too overwhelmed to make changes. But in the end, it wasn't about being busy. It was about facing the truth. It was about accepting that I had been avoiding what mattered most. As the night went on, I stayed quiet. I didn't argue with them. I didn't try to defend myself. I just sat there, absorbing everything they said. It felt like I was being buried under their words, under their expectations, but at the same time, something inside me was starting to shift. I wasn't just angry anymore. I wasn't just frustrated. I was scared. Scared that I had lost my way. Scared that I had waited too long to make a change. But more than anything, I was scared of disappointing them forever. The evening ended with more awkward silence, and I left the house feeling more lost than ever. I walked to my car, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to fix things. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't keep avoiding the truth. It was time to take responsibility, time to face everything I had been avoiding for so long. But the question was, how? I spent the next few days lost in my thoughts, replaying the conversation with my family over and over. It was hard to believe that everything had changed so quickly. One moment, I thought I was handling things just fine, and the next, it felt like I was on the brink of a collapse. I tried to distract myself with work, with anything that would take my mind off what had happened, but it was no use. The pressure was suffocating. The weight of my family's expectations was crushing me, and I couldn't escape it. I had spent so long hiding behind my own excuses, telling myself that I was doing the best I could, but now it felt like the truth was staring me in the face. I wasn't enough. I wasn't even close. But something in me had shifted. A part of me had finally started to recognize that maybe, just maybe, I had been avoiding the truth for too long. It was like a small spark of clarity had been lit in the middle of all this chaos, and now I had to face what I had been avoiding. The next week, I got a call from Rachel. She wanted to meet up for coffee, and even though I wasn't sure I was ready to face her, I agreed. I hadn't talked to her much since the dinner, and I wasn't sure where we stood. But I knew I needed answers. I met her at a cafe, and when I saw her, I couldn't help but notice the concern in her eyes. "Mike," she said, sitting down across from me. "How are you holding up?" I tried to smile, but it felt like the weight of the world was pressing on me. "I'm okay," I lied. "Just figuring things out." She didn't buy it. "I know it's been tough," she said softly, her voice filled with sympathy. "But you have to understand, Mom and Mark, they didn't mean to hurt you. They just want the best for you. They want to see you succeed." I nodded, but it didn't make me feel any better. "I know," I said, though I wasn't sure I really did know. "But it's like I can't do anything right. No matter what I do, it's never enough for them." Rachel reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "Mike," she said gently, "they don't see things the way you do. They have their own expectations, and sometimes they forget that you're your own person. You're not a failure just because you're not meeting their timeline. You have to do this for you, not for them." I looked at her, feeling a mix of gratitude and frustration. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "I don't know how to break out of this. I don't know how to stop feeling like I'm stuck." Rachel sighed. "You're not stuck, Mike. You're just figuring things out at your own pace. And that's okay. You don't have to have everything figured out right now." Her words were comforting, but they didn't make the knot in my stomach loosen. I still felt like I was drowning in expectations, in responsibilities I wasn't sure I could handle. But Rachel's words planted a seed in my mind. What if she was right? What if I had been measuring my life by their standards and not my own? What if I had spent all this time thinking I wasn't good enough because I was comparing myself to them, to their achievements? I left the cafe with a heavy heart but a small sense of clarity. Rachel had reminded me that I wasn't a failure, that I was allowed to take my time, to figure things out for myself. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something that I had been missing all along. It wasn't just my family's expectations, it was my own. I had built up this image of myself, this idea of what I should be, and when I couldn't live up to it, it felt like I was falling apart. I needed to make a change. I needed to stop running from the truth, to stop hiding behind excuses. The question was, where do I start? The answer didn't come to me right away, but over the next few days, I began to notice something that had been right in front of me the entire time. I had been avoiding the conversation I needed to have. I had been avoiding the truth about why I felt stuck, why I couldn't move forward. It wasn't just about my career or my family, it was about me, about how I saw myself. I had been letting their judgments, their expectations, define who I was. And the truth was, I didn't know who I was anymore. I had spent so much time trying to meet their expectations, trying to please them, that I had lost sight of what I wanted for myself. It wasn't about making everyone happy, it was about finding my own path, my own way forward. But it wasn't easy. The thought of confronting my family, of admitting that I wasn't living up to their standards, terrified me. I didn't know how they would react. Or if they would even understand. But I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. So, I made the decision to talk to them. To finally confront the truth. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had to do it. I had to stop letting them define me, to stop letting their expectations control my life. The next time I saw them, I knew it was time. I had to face my fears, my insecurities, and take responsibility for my own life. I had to stop avoiding the hard truths, and finally start living for myself. I just hoped they would understand. I didn't want to go back, but I knew I had no choice. It had been a week since my conversation with Rachel, and although her words had given me some comfort, I still couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slowly falling apart. I was trying to move forward, but the weight of my family's expectations still loomed over me. I knew I had to make a change, but how? I didn't know where to begin. Every time I tried to take a step, I was dragged back by the overwhelming pressure to be something I wasn't. But I also knew that I couldn't keep living like this, caught in this cycle of doubt and disappointment. The next family gathering was coming up, and I knew I had to face it. I couldn't keep running away from the truth, from the reality that I wasn't living up to their standards, and that I was holding myself back. I had spent so many years avoiding confrontation, avoiding the uncomfortable truths, but now it was time to confront them. I had to break free from the weight of everyone's expectations, even if it meant hurting some feelings along the way. The night of the family dinner arrived, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. I walked into the house, feeling the familiar tension in the air, the kind of tension that always seemed to surround our family. Everyone was in the living room, chatting and laughing, but I could feel the undercurrent of judgment hanging over me. My mom and Mark were already there, and I could see the look on my mom's face, the same one she had worn the last time we spoke, the one that said. She was waiting for me to prove myself. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I walked over to the couch and sat down, trying to act casual, but I could feel their eyes on me. It wasn't like before, where I could just sit back and let the conversation flow. This time, I was going to speak up. I didn't know what I was going to say yet, but I knew it had to happen. After a few minutes of small talk, my mom looked at me, her expression serious. "Mike," she said, her voice softer than usual. "How's everything going? How's work?" I felt a wave of frustration rise in me, but I pushed it down. "It's fine," I said, trying to sound calm. "Just busy." She nodded, but there was a look in her eyes that told me she wasn't satisfied with that answer. "Busy? You've been busy for months now. What's really going on?" I knew what she was getting at, and I couldn't keep avoiding it. I took a deep breath and looked at her, then at Mark. "I'm not where you want me to be, okay?" I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I've been trying, but I don't know what you want from me anymore. I'm not perfect, and I'm not on the same path you want me to be on. And I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending that I am." The room went silent. My mom and Mark exchanged a look, and I could feel the tension building. I hadn't expected it to be easy, but I hadn't expected it to feel like this either. My mom was the first to speak. "Mike, we're not asking you to be perfect," she said, her voice softening. "We just want you to take control of your life. We want to see you succeed." I shook my head. "You don't get it," I said, my voice growing louder. "I've been trying to succeed by your standards, but it's not working. And it's not because I'm not trying, it's because I'm not you. I can't live my life trying to meet your expectations. I need to figure it out on my own." Mark finally spoke up, his voice cool. "You've been saying that for a long time, Mike. At some point, you need to actually start doing something. You can't just keep saying you're figuring it out." His words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't the first time he had made a comment like that, but it was the first time it felt like he was giving up on me. "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not asking you to understand, but I need you to let me do this my way." There was a long silence, and for a moment, it felt like everything was hanging in the balance. I had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable. But I couldn't take it back. I had to say it. I had to be honest with them, even if it meant pushing them away. Finally, my mom spoke again. "Mike, we just want what's best for you," she said, her voice quiet. "We want to see you happy, to see you succeed. But you need to take responsibility for your own life." Her words stung, but I knew she was right. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, letting my family define who I was and what I should do. I had to take responsibility, even if I didn't know exactly what that looked like yet. But at least I was starting to understand what I needed to do. "I know," I said, my voice softer now. "I'm trying. But I need time. And I need space to figure this out." My mom looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll give you the space you need, Mike," she said. "But you have to take it seriously. We're not going to wait forever." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The tension in the room hadn't completely disappeared, but at least I had said what I needed to say. I didn't know where I was going, or how I was going to get there, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't keep living this way. I couldn't keep running from the truth. It was time to face it, to take control of my life, even if it scared me. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to finally start living for myself. I thought the worst was over, but I couldn't have been more wrong. After that conversation, after everything that was said, I felt like I had taken a huge step forward. I had finally confronted my family, opened up to them, and admitted that I wasn't where they wanted me to be. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The next few days were filled with more questions than answers. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head, but the doubt never seemed to fade. Sure, my mom had said she'd give me the space I needed, but I could still feel the tension hanging in the air. I could feel their expectations still weighing on me, still pushing me to prove that I was capable, that I could finally take control. But the truth was, I wasn't sure if I could. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to make the changes I needed to make. I had spent so many years following everyone else's path, trying to meet their expectations, that now I didn't even know what my own path looked like. I had been so focused on what they wanted me to do that I had completely lost sight of what I wanted. The pressure was starting to mount again. The pressure to succeed, to figure it all out, to prove that I wasn't a failure. But every time I tried to take a step forward, it felt like I was stepping into the unknown, and that terrified me. I needed to make a decision. I had to choose whether to keep living in the shadow of their expectations or to step out and create my own life, on my own terms. But how could I do that? I had no plan, no clear direction. I was just lost. Then, a week later, I got an unexpected call from Rachel. She had been quiet for a while, and I wasn't sure how she would react after everything that had happened. But when I picked up the phone, she seemed calmer than I had ever heard her. "Mike, I think it's time we talk again," she said, her voice steady. "I've been thinking about everything, and I think I know what you need to do." Her words caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I don't have all the answers," she said, "but I think you need to stop running from the hard things. You've been avoiding the truth for so long, and it's time to face it." I took a deep breath. I wasn't sure what she was talking about, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding the truth any longer. "What truth?" I asked. She paused for a moment, as if she was carefully choosing her words. "You need to talk to Mom and Mark again," she said. "You need to stop letting them control you. But more than that, you need to stop controlling yourself. You've been so caught up in trying to meet their expectations that you've lost sight of who you really are." I felt my chest tighten. Was she right? Was I so focused on pleasing them that I had lost myself in the process? I didn't know. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I had spent so much time trying to live up to their standards, but in the process, I had ignored my own needs, my own desires. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure I'm ready to face them again. I don't know if I can take that pressure." Rachel's voice softened. "Mike, you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But you need to take control of your life, even if that means facing the uncomfortable truths. You can't keep running." I let her words sink in. Could I do this? Could I face my family, face the reality of my life, and finally take control? I didn't know, but one thing was clear: I couldn't keep living in fear. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. And so, I made a decision. I would face them again. I would talk to my mom and Mark. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew it had to be said. I had to stop hiding behind the fear of disappointment and start owning my life. The next day, I made the call. "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "We need to talk." It felt like everything stopped. I had never been this direct with her before. There was silence on the other end of the line before she spoke. "What's going on, Mike?" she asked, her voice cautious. "I don't know how to say this," I said, feeling the weight of my words. "But I've been living in fear for too long. I've been living my life trying to meet your expectations, Mark's expectations, everyone's expectations, and I've lost sight of who I am." I paused, waiting for her response, but she didn't interrupt. "I've been hiding behind excuses," I continued. "I've been afraid to face the truth, afraid to confront what's really been holding me back. And I need to change that. I need to figure out who I am, what I want, and what I'm really capable of. I can't keep living this way, trying to live up to a version of myself that isn't me." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "Mike," she said quietly, "I didn't know you felt this way." I could hear the softness in her voice, but there was also a sense of concern. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to put so much pressure on you. I just wanted what was best for you." I swallowed hard. "I know you did," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "But I can't keep living like this. I have to figure this out on my own." "I understand," she said, her voice soft but understanding. "And we'll support you. But you have to do this for yourself, Mike. No one else can do it for you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She was right. No one could do it for me. It was my life, and I had to take control. For the first time, I felt a sense of relief. I wasn't alone in this. My family might not fully understand, but they wanted me to find my own way. And now, for the first time, I was ready to take that first step. I had been preparing for this moment for what felt like weeks, but the night I finally decided to confront my family again, I wasn't sure if I was ready. After that conversation with my mom, I felt like a weight had been lifted, but there was still so much left unsaid, so much left to confront. I knew I had to be honest with them, not just for my sake, but for theirs too. I couldn't keep running from the truth. The morning of the family gathering, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at myself. I was tired of pretending, tired of holding everything inside. I was about to face the consequences of the decisions I had made and the actions I had avoided. I had spent so much of my life trying to please everyone around me, trying to live up to their expectations, but I couldn't keep doing it. I wasn't that person anymore. And now, I had to show them. I had to show myself. When I walked into the house that evening, I could already feel the tension. It wasn't like the last time. This time, I felt like I was walking into a new chapter, ready to take control. My mom and Mark were sitting in the living room, and I could already sense their eyes on me, waiting for me to say something. They knew something was coming. But I wasn't going to hide anymore. I took a deep breath and sat down across from them, the weight of their gaze heavy on me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. My mom looked up at me, her expression calm but expectant. "What's on your mind, Mike?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. I took another deep breath. "I've been thinking about everything you said," I began. "And I know I've been avoiding a lot of things. I've been trying to make everyone happy, trying to live up to your expectations, and I've completely lost sight of who I am in the process." I looked at Mark, who had been quiet until now. His face was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I don't want to keep pretending," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "I've been living my life according to what you wanted, according to what I thought you expected of me. And it's not working. It hasn't been working for a long time." There was a long silence. My mom looked at me, her eyes softening, but I could tell she wasn't sure where this conversation was going. "Mike, we've only ever wanted what's best for you," she said, her voice quieter now, more understanding. "We want to see you succeed. But we also want to see you happy. We don't want you to feel pressured to live up to some idea of who you should be." "I know," I said, my throat tight. "But the thing is, I've been living my life for everyone else. And I haven't been happy. I've been so focused on trying to meet your expectations that I haven't stopped to think about what I want, what I need. I've been trying to live up to a version of myself that isn't me." There was a moment of silence, and I could feel the tension in the room shift. My mom and Mark exchanged a look, and I could tell they were processing what I was saying. "Mike," Mark said finally, his voice low, "we've always wanted you to succeed. But you need to take control of your life, man. You can't keep hiding behind excuses. You can't keep letting fear hold you back." His words cut through me. I had expected his support, but not this directness. It was like a wake-up call, a reminder that I couldn't keep making excuses for myself. It was time to face the truth, no matter how hard it was. "I'm not hiding anymore," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I'm not going to let fear control me. I'm going to start living for myself. I don't know where that will take me, but I have to try." I could see my mom's eyes soften, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of understanding in her face. "Mike," she said quietly, "we're proud of you. But you have to understand, this isn't going to be easy. You're going to face challenges, and you'll make mistakes. But we're here for you. We always have been." Her words were the first real comfort I had felt in a long time. It wasn't just about them accepting me, it was about me accepting myself. I had been so afraid of failing, so afraid of disappointing them, that I had forgotten that I had to live for myself, not for anyone else. "Thanks, Mom," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I don't know what's next, but I'm ready to figure it out. I can't keep living this way." There was a quiet moment between us, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally being honest with myself and my family. The walls I had built up around myself were slowly starting to crumble. I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't where they wanted me to be, but that didn't mean I couldn't get there on my own. I didn't need to meet their expectations. I just needed To meet my own. The conversation that night didn't solve everything. It didn't fix the years of tension, the years of disappointment, but it was a start. It was the first step toward healing, the first step toward taking control of my life. I wasn't sure where this would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I had finally taken back the power I had given away. And that was enough for now. I didn't know how much time had passed, but when I looked back, I realized how much had changed. I had taken that first step, and it was like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. The guilt, the pressure to meet everyone's expectations, it all started to fade. I wasn't perfect, and I didn't have everything figured out, but I was finally moving in the right direction. The conversation with my family had been the turning point. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't a clean break, but it was necessary. I had to face the truth, confront my fears, and for the first time in a long time, I had been honest with myself and with them. And that honesty felt freeing. But it wasn't just about the words we spoke that night, it was about the aftermath, the consequences that came with finally breaking free from the expectations I had carried for so long. Over the next few weeks, things were different. My family was still adjusting to the change, and so was I. There were moments of tension, moments when I questioned if I had done the right thing. But each time I doubted myself, I remembered the clarity I had felt that night, the sense of relief that washed over me when I finally said what needed to be said. That was my truth. And no matter how hard it was to face, it was worth it. I began to take small steps, reevaluating my choices, my career, my relationships. I wasn't rushing anymore. I was letting myself breathe, letting myself grow. I realized that I didn't need to have it all figured out, that the journey was more important than the destination. I began focusing on what made me happy, what made me feel fulfilled, instead of trying to meet someone else's definition of success. There were still challenges ahead. There were still moments when I felt like I wasn't enough, when the weight of my family's expectations crept back in. But I was learning how to handle them. I was learning how to stand up for myself, to say no when I needed to, and to take control of my own life. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always pretty, but it was real. My relationship with my family started to shift. At first, there was some distance, there were awkward conversations, moments where it felt like we were still tiptoeing around the truth. But slowly, things began to heal. My mom, especially, started to understand that I wasn't rejecting her or her love, I was just rejecting the idea that I had to live my life by her rules. She was learning to give me space, to let me make my own decisions, even if they didn't align with what she had envisioned for me. And Mark, well, Mark was still Mark. He didn't always understand, but he respected my decision. We didn't talk about it much, but there was a quiet understanding between us now. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was just real. As for me, I started to rebuild my sense of self. I stopped comparing myself to others, stopped worrying about what people thought. I started doing things for me, not for anyone else. I began focusing on my own growth, my own happiness, and while it was a slow process, it felt like I was finally moving in the right direction. It wasn't a straight path, there were setbacks, there were days when I doubted myself, but I kept going. I learned that it was okay to not have all the answers, that it was okay to take my time. I learned that success wasn't a destination, but a journey. It wasn't about meeting everyone else's expectations, but about finding my own. And slowly, things started to fall into place. My job, my relationships, my overall sense of self, they all began to improve. Not because I was suddenly perfect, but because I was finally being true to myself. And that, more than anything else, felt like the greatest accomplishment of all. Looking back now, I see that the hardest part was not facing my family, not admitting that I had been avoiding the truth, it was facing myself. The person I had been running from was the one who needed to change the most. And when I finally did that, when I finally took responsibility for my own life, everything else began to fall into place. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but it was worth it. I'm not done yet. I still have a lot of work to do, but I'm on the right path now. And for the first time in a long time, I'm at peace with that.